Welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. This will be a solo episode. Just me, Jim, here, talking about the first group stage game of the FIFA Club World Cup for none other than Chelsea Football Club. And they played LAFC yesterday, Monday, June 16th, in Atlanta at Mercedes Benz Stadium. And it was a 2-0 victory for Chelsea. The boys in blue from London. And those boys in blue are staying in Philadelphia. That's their home base for the entirety of this FIFA Club World Cup. So they had to travel from Philly to Atlanta. Of course, getting to Philly by way of London. Some international guys, I think, were coming from their respective countries where they were playing from the international break. But a good start for Chelsea. You know, you never know with some of these games, opponents that you don't see as often, how they're going to go. And I think to take on an MLS club in the United States of America that is in the middle of their season right now. You know, they're not super great. I want to say they're 5th in the Western Conference, but really 13th in the MLS if you consider both conferences. But still, Chelsea are a team that has guys coming off international break. Some guys have been arrested. You don't know how they're going to do. Rest, all these factors are certainly things to consider. And we didn't know what Enzo Maresca was going to go with from a lineup perspective. I was expecting a pretty strong lineup. You know, we didn't necessarily preview this one a ton, but I know Danny was not expecting a strong lineup. He thought it would be more of a mixed bag, similar to what Enzo Maresca had done in the Conference League at times. So for me, I was not surprised at all when I saw quite a strong lineup from Maresca for this match against LAFC. You had Robert Sanchez between the sticks. From right to left on the back line, you had Reece James, Tosin Adarabioyo, Levi Colwill, and Marc Cucurella. In the midfield, you had Lavia and Caicedo. And then up top in the attack, Neto, Palmer, Madueke on left wing, and Nico Jackson at the striker role. Some fans were expecting and hoping for Liam Delap to get the start. To be honest, I just knew that Maresca was going to go with the players that he trusted, the players that he had been with in the entirety of the 24-25 season. This has been viewed as an extension of the season that has already been going on for Chelsea, and that's the way the owners look at it. That's the way that Enzo Maresca looks at it. That's the way that FIFA and the entire soccer world looks at it. So I was not surprised at all to see Nico Jackson. I was actually thrilled to see him. And I knew that Delap would come in at some point, and it's not a slight to Delap that Jackson's getting the start because, frankly, he deserved it for how he played all year. So, that being said, were Chelsea going to dominate with the lineup? You know, I never thought they would. Some say it's the style of play Maresca does, that they don't dominate. But you just knew that it wasn't going to be this super energized match, in my opinion. Stadium was pretty empty, only around 20,000 out of a potential 80 down there in hot Atlanta. Maresca even talked about it. You know, there wasn't a ton of energy there, so really could you expect the boys to get it going? I don't know. I'm not using that as an excuse, but let's just say I wasn't that surprised that the game started off a little slower. I think Chelsea certainly were the better team throughout. You know, definitely in the second half. First half as well, though, I would say they were the better team. LAFC, you know, did not have a lot of chances for the most part, in my opinion, from watching. I think defensively, the back line was super strong without. We consistently see Reece James is one of the most important players for Chelsea Football Club. Gusto comes in at half for James and is clearly just a way worse player. So in that first half, I thought Reece looked great. Tosin and Levi didn't really put a toe wrong the entire match that they played. They played the entire 90. Cucurella as well. You know, we've seen you got him, Reece, Caicedo, and Palmer, I think are the four most important and best players for Chelsea. And Cucurella showed again why he is so key at left back. And I'll talk more later about why we need a backup left back because we cannot play Cucurella as much as he plays. You know, he plays every important match for us, Conference League, Premier League, Club World Cup. He's playing for Spain, 90 minutes every match. So that's going to be something to watch, I think. That's going to be really key. Him and James did both pick up a yellow Tosin as well, so one more, they'd be suspended for a game. Definitely keep an eye on that. But then Sanchez between the sticks. He's quietly been putting together strong performances to end the 2025 season. Now through this Club World Cup, couple nice saves. LAFC weren't necessarily putting off all these worldly shots, but Robert is doing what's asked of him, and that's really all we can ask as of now. So credit to Big Bob Sanchez for that. His hairline's looking better. He's got sort of a buzz cut now. Not quite the whole bald look. But yeah, you got the midfield of Lavia and Caicedo. Enzo starts on the bench, comes in at half for Lavia. Caicedo and Lavia have a great understanding right now. Caicedo continues to be, in my opinion, the best player on the team. Lavia was fine. But really, the pivot that they had, I think the key thing in this match was how tight the midfield two would be, whether it was Lavia and Caicedo, whether it was Lavia and Cucurella at times, inverting on that left side there. I think that was really interesting to see. Enzo in there at times. They were so close together, receiving the ball from a Colwill or a Tosin. If you guys were watching this match, I don't know if you could really tell, but those guys, the way they'd be so close together, I just found, really interesting, because they're receiving passes from the defenders, and then they'd go back and forth with each other. It was a clear plan for Maresca to do that and be in the midfield, and then take it from there and spread the ball out wide, whether it was to Neto, to Noni, to Palmer in certain areas, bombing it deep to Jackson. A clear plan. You usually don't see the pivot being so tight there. So I found that really intriguing. And I think it was one of the keys to the match, because the midfield was dominated by Chelsea. I think possession was 65-35 in favor of Chelsea, so that was a key part of the game. And they were getting the ball out to the attackers. The first 30-ish minutes, I didn't think the wingers were good at all when they were getting the ball. Noni missed a pretty good chance created by Nico Jackson. Neto was not doing much. At times, Colwill would try to bomb it forward. They weren't able to do much. Palmer looked good and Jackson looked good. But again, when you're getting the ball out to these wings and putting them in good spots, the wingers need to be able to do something when they have the space. Can they dribble at defenders? We saw Bayern Munich be able to do that with ease, albeit against a poor Auckland City team. But it's just different when you have wingers that can do things one-on-one and create opportunities. And, thankfully in the 34th minute, we saw Neto come up really clutch. Palmer's in the middle of the field. He creates a nice chance with a pass to Nico after Cucurella had intercepted it, mind you. And Jackson kind of gets past two defenders a little bit, turning with the ball, fires a beautiful through ball past a defender to Neto, puts on the brakes, guy goes flying with a Mario Kart banana peel, and then fires it into the right part of the net. Beautiful team goal, really beautiful team goal. I was very impressed with that goal. It just shows the capabilities that Nico Jackson does have and the things he can do as a striker. He might not be the greatest finisher at times, but his hold-up play, the way he links with Palmer and some of these wingers is really special, and I think he's one of the best strikers in the Premier League at doing a lot of those things. So credit to him. Up 1-0 at half. I was thinking this was going to be Real Betis, where we put a few goals into the back of the net in the second half. I wasn't correct. I do think there were more chances in the second half, though. So as I mentioned, you did have Reese and Lavia come off in favor of Enzo and Gusto. Not surprising, managing those guys' minutes, as we've kind of done all year long. George comes in eventually, and Delap for Noni and Nico. I do think it'll be interesting to watch, because I want to see Nico play with Delap, whether it's a two-striker system, Nico at left wing, whatever the case. George just has not shown me enough at left wing. Clearly, we're still desperate for a left wing, whether it's Gittins, Nico Williams. No, probably not. Malik Fofana, whoever the case may be. But glad to see Delap get some minutes as well. Essugo and Nkunku came in. Don't need to talk much about them. But the interesting thing about those subs for me was Enzo Fernandez continues to be an incredible midfielder with his long passing, his short passing, the way he can crash the box. He's doing everything right for me in this team as a midfielder, and I love seeing that. Gusto is doing nothing. I just don't think he fits in this team, and it's unfortunate. He's not a good defender. He bombs up and down, but not in this Chelsea team because that's not our style. He's not good at inverting. So that, to me, will be key. Is he just going to be depth? And that's fine if he's depth, but if you need him to play important minutes, I just don't think he can provide those super important minutes for the team. So, I definitely do want to watch that going forward here. But we make our way to the 79th minute. Again, Palmer's not getting the assist here, but he creates this play with a nice original pass to Delap, who finds the space, times his run perfectly. First time, fires a cheeky little cross back to the middle of the field. And who's there crashing the box? You guessed it, Enzo Fernandez. His Lampard-esque box crashing that he does here. And I think when Santos eventually plays too, he's the type of guy that does that stuff as well. But I love Enzo Fernandez. He is an ideal guy to have in this team. Maresca talks about how he doesn't want one striker to just score 40 goals. He wants all these guys that can score a bunch. Enzo is one of those guys. I think you could see a guy like him get to 10 goals in a league season. Maybe that sounds crazy. I really think it could happen. So super happy for Enzo. He's making me really want an Enzo jersey, honestly. It's going to be tough to decide between him and Reece James, I think, at this point when I get the new home kit. But Enzo's making the case. Enzo is making the case. So, 2-0, Chelsea win. Great win. We take all these wins for what they are. I'm never going to complain with the quality. I think there were moments where Chelsea showed a ton of quality. I think there were other moments where they didn't. And I don't think LAFC is a solid team. But, again, we play who's in front of us. We got the win. And now we move on. We play Flamengo on Friday. I think it's going to be a super, super interesting match in Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field. I just know there's going to be a lot of Flamengo fans there. They totally dominated the atmosphere against Esperance de Tunis, last night. And it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully Chelsea fans show up as well. I think they did pretty solid in Atlanta. I know there's a lot of people that are going to be having watch parties, going to pubs, and watching Chelsea here. So, going to be a clash of two pretty good teams. Flamengo did win 2-0 in their match as well. Was expecting them to potentially win by a larger margin. So, I think it's going to be exciting. Former Chelsea player is their coach, Felipe Luis, and Jorginho as well is on the team. So, going to be fun. I do want to shout out one of my all-time favorite Chelsea players, my original, favorite player, Thiago Silva. Just dominant today against Dortmund. 0-0, clean sheet for Silva. So awesome to see how well he still continues to play at 40 years old. Oh, monstro. I got his kit. I was wearing it yesterday. Just a great player. A fun player. Such a leader. All the guys that came up through the club when he was there at Chelsea still love him and appreciate him for what he did, being a leader, showing them the ropes. It's just awesome that he made such an impact at Chelsea Football Club, winning a Champions League. So wanted to shout him out. Definitely give us a follow on TikTok. Watch our content over there on YouTube. If you're listening on a podcast, this is a video episode. Come to see my shining, smiling face, if you will. And just give us a like, a subscribe. We're pushing a lot right now. We just put out some great content from being in Cincinnati at the Club World Cup, watching Bayern Munich. So a lot of great things going on over here at Always Bayern Chelsea. Shout out to Noah Rasmussen. If you're still listening at this point, you are probably our number one listener, and appreciate all the things you do. Hope you're having a great time over there in Europe. You might have flown back at this point. But nonetheless, shout out to you. Up to Chelsea, Mia San Mia. Have a great rest of your day.